Hello and welcome to the Binge Thinker episode 59. My name is Jamil Raymond. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here as always. On this week's ep, we continue my $30 million sales course, all for free, running through a draft of the course end to end, all the key concepts and perspectives that I've been talking about to date, giving a little bit more of this tasty sales formula for absolutely nothing, just for being a loyal member to the pod. Quick little update. Last week I did talk about, I think I fucked my bicep again. Thank fuck that is not the case. I do not have to get surgery. It looks like I've pulled or strained some of my wrist flexors and extensors, which are the, the gripping muscles when you grab something. Thank fuck. I'm really, really happy for that. I really did think over the weekend, whilst I was re-injured in my own head, that I was going to have to get surgery again, and it was going to have to be another month of rehab, and I was going to be overseas with a fucking sling. It was going to be a nightmare, but goodness, praise the good spirits above, no problems there. So just giving it a rest, taking the week off, just training hard, undoing some of the big boy mentality for a second, and then, from next week onwards, we should be good to go. That's really all I've got to update you on. So, without further ado, let me give you some sales info for nothing. I was gonna try and do something cool and make that rhyme with that further ado part, and then I fucked it. Didn't have it in me. But that's okay. We push on. So, let's kick this bad boy off. Last week we talked about the essential skills, the future opportunity of tech, what kind of people are in tech, the tech people versus the people. I want to go a little bit through why me, why should you be listening to me, just to refresh on my background in sales and my capabilities, what I've done, so you know that I'm not just some fucking random idiot talking on the internet about shit he doesn't know about, which happens a lot. A bit about the mindset that's required, which is just a good general mindset to have when you're learning any new skill. And then we're going to go through some ecosystem stuff. What does the tech sales ecosystem look like? What does the tech industry really look like? And then maybe a little bit of background on the different kinds of selling that exist, B2B versus B2C sales. All good? All good. So, me. Why are you listening to me? Why should you listen to me as an educator, as a salesperson? Realistically, I have always been an educator more than a salesperson. Most of my selling style hasn't been about trying to make the most money out of people. It's actually just finding technology interesting, realizing how real innovative points, how it can benefit a customer, and being very, very convincing and very particular about how a solution, a piece of tech, a gizmo, a gadget is good for you and why it should be beneficial to you, and very good at articulating that. And that's been the constant narrative in my life, from sales to this podcast and talking about all the cool things that I do with the biohacking and the systems and whatnot. That's me. So again, never really being a salesperson. Do I like the hunt? Do I like to chase a number? Yeah, I'm motivated by money to a degree. I love chasing a number. I'm a serial overachiever. So that's just who I am as a personality. But that mixture of capability versus good conversationalism versus just a natural talent, or just leveraging my natural skills that I do without really trying too hard and being, again, that overachiever, is what has put me in a very strong position when it comes to recognitions for sales, top sales performance, etc. So to go through some of my numbers about what I've done, here's my key call-outs. Actually, let me pull this out. If you're only listening to this, you won't see what I'm doing here, but in front of me, I have pulled out a whole bunch of top sales awards that I've accumulated over the years. You can probably hear them over their time. Now, all of these awards are all from my years in retail, not in B2B, because in retail, they treat you like more of a bit of a child, so they're happy to give the certificate. And I liked, being the overachiever, I liked having the certificates, so I kept them. They were laminated, thought they were quite nice, so I kept them. I also have my top student in a unit prize for selling and sales management. So when I was at Swinburne University in 2014, as part of my marketing degree, there was a module called Selling and Sales Management. I did that, naturally being in sales, and ended up being top of the class. So I remember distinctly talking way more than most people about sales and how sales works, about the process. They were more focused on business to consumer selling, which is more just selling to customers, selling to the mass market, that sort of stuff, as opposed to B2B, which is solution and selling and business to business selling. But there were still B2B elements in there, and that sort of built my understanding a little bit better of what solution sales was and B2B sales. Now, back then, I wasn't doing B2B sales. I had maybe just started selling business products when I was working at a retail store, at a Telstra retail store, which is, if you are an overseas listener, Telstra is the largest telecommunications company in Australia. So if you're in the US, it's like the Verizon. If you are in the UK, it could be like a BT or a 3 or an Orange or something like that. So working for a major telco provider. So yeah, so being a top student prize, that's there. So always been pretty fucking good at talking about sales, selling, all that sort of stuff. Maybe to go back about my history in tech at that point, and tech sales, most of my career in B2B sales or in just general technology sales has been at Telstra, the telco provider. And whilst people might think, telco doesn't really do much, it's, landlines and mobiles and internet. And you go, yeah, that's the core of what consumer tech is for Telstra, but that's the basis of your entire technology ecosystem, right? Is the core of that is devices, it is connectivity, it's the internet. Almost nothing exists in today's society without devices, without the internet. Even more to a point now where, millennials need internet more than they need probably running water. Because it's such a requirement, right? It's undeniable that devices and the internet are an integral part of technology and how people access technology. Now, as I moved from consumer and dominated that space, so I started working in a Telstra shop when I was 21. And what had happened was I got into the Telstra shop because previous to that, I used to work at Coles. That was my first job. Coles is a supermarket chain. I was in the dairy department, stacking milk, facing up the fridges and the freezers, all that sort of fun stuff, stocking shelves. And then from there, Coles Mobile had opened up. So Coles was trying to diversify their portfolio of products. So they decided to get into the telco space. I went, hey, I'm okay at selling. I've worked at Coles before. I think I was studying at the time. I've got a business degree. Well, not a business degree, I had a business certificate. It was an entry-level role to sell mobile plans and mobile phones inside Coles. And that business did not go well. It is a failed venture because they did not have a proper skill set to teach the staff how to sell mobile phones and plans. They were carrying a lot of stock that was very expensive compared to what the rest of the devices were in the shop, because they had to buy, dozens of phones and have them on stock on hold. And you know what shopping centers are like and supermarkets are like. There's thievery everywhere. So they were very cautious about having a $1,000, $1,500 product sitting on their shelves that would, if they would get stolen or lost or damaged, would heavily impact the cost of goods sold in their business. Anyway, I'm getting a little sidetracked. Coles Mobile failed. I got fired from Coles Mobile for stealing barbecue chickens whilst I was at work. So what I would do is, the rotisserie chickens, the bachelor's handbags, I would take those for lunch and forget to pay for them. Sometimes it was deliberate. And yeah, the store manager realized that I was doing it and then fired. They sent that to HR. HR came back to me because I was working for an agency. I wasn't directly employed by Coles at the time. And then the agency had to terminate my contract, which is fine because the place was falling apart anyway. Anyhow, after that, I was actually, without any direct sales training, even there, I was the best salesperson on that team. I was better than the manager, who was just some dipshit that used to work operations at Australia Post and just wanted a different job and a different change of things. He was not a real people manager. Anyway, I had a taste and a nous for technology and selling tech while I was there. When I was 2021, I was bumming around, not doing a lot. I'd stopped working at the gym. I was stopped doing gigs, like music gigs at the time, so I thought I'd get a full-time job for a bit, make a little bit of money. The local Telstra shop that was up the road from my house was hiring, so I thought, let's go. Now, this was a franchise Telstra shop. It was not a company-owned one, and as a franchisee, that was a private business, a contracted business. So their rules for hiring people were a lot more lax than a normal Telstra corporate store would be. Not to say I did anything wrong, but I got the job because basically they just needed someone who was moderately okay at sales they could develop to take over the full-time role for fuck all money. Right? I was earning $5 or $6 less an hour compared to a company-owned store because I had a mate who was working at a company-owned store at a Telstra shop. But I was like, hey, it's a job, it's somewhere to start, let's do this. I was there for 6 months, and then I decided to go back to uni and start my marketing degree, where I ended up getting eventually the top sales student prize. So I decided to go from full-time to casual and got the casual role at the same company-owned Telstra shop that my mate was working at, because I didn't like the pay and the conditions at the shop that I was currently at. Because again, small business owner, kind of dodge, barely paying award rates, bit of a fuckwit. Anyhow, I'm at uni. This is 21, 22 years old. I'm at uni. It's 22 now. I'm at uni doing my marketing degree, working weekends at the Telstra shop in Eastland, which is Ringwood in Victoria. If anyone's playing at home, it's a local. It took me a few months to get into the swing of things, of getting into understanding how to sell in the business and sell the different cadence and a different focus, and really still, develop my sales capability. But eventually, as you'll see here, with all these sales awards, I started to absolutely fucking dominate the sales game while I was there. So we used to have metrics based on different types of products. There was 16 different KPIs. I think 4 or 5 of them were core KPIs. That's what they really did. That's what they really measured your sales performance on, and that was based around new mobile plans, new mobile bundles, home internet bundles and home bundles. And then they usually have a couple of strategically focused products. It could be trying to sell more Foxtel, which is cable TV, or maybe they were trying to sell more accessories, or they were trying to sell upsells to sell more accessories on certain products like the iPhone, because the iPhone was a very high cost device and made a phone shop fuck all money. That's one of the beauties of Apple, is that iPhones, that device that has changed the way that we consume and take in technology, is a highly profitable product to Apple when it comes to a device. If, for example, this is back in 2015, so they were selling iPhone 5s back then. And even an iPhone 5 back then was still about $1,100-1,200. And the Telstra shop would only make $90 on the phone itself. So there was fuck all margin. So all of that margin, all of that cost of that phone was going directly to Apple. And that's why they've got billions in cash, because they were selling it for fuck all pass through, right? Which was, great for them. Good business model. And people wanted it so they could do it, and they still continue to do that to this day. Anyway, distracted. So one of the good things about working in a telco, both in business to consumer and business to business, is that because connectivity and devices are the underlying infrastructure for the rest of technology that's effective now to be delivered through, you get exposed to a broad amount of vendors, resellers, technology partners that want a piece of your action, right? So I wasn't just selling, I was selling Apple, I was selling Samsung, I was selling HTC devices, I was selling internet security, I was selling the T-Hub, which was a home hub system, which was like a little tablet that was made by a shitty tablet and a cordless phone combo that was, it was an entertainment device. It wasn't bad, it was very experimental, it wasn't very good quality. But so you would get exposed to a range of selling different products, solutions, connectivity. And I like that. I like the broad array of different solutions and products that you could work with and to play with to, again, curate a solution for a customer. And because I didn't care about I did care a little bit. Sometimes you get incentives and whatnot. But again, I just liked the breadth of tools that I had to create solutions for customers. And I'd be great at the cross-sell and the upsell, right? So the cross-sell is maybe, you're selling them a home phone. So they're re-signing their mobile phone. And you go, hey, let me look at your account. Hey, your bundle is expired and we could give you better value for the same price. How about we recontract that as well? And then you're locked in for a great rate. You get more internet. You sort it for the next 2 years. Sound good? Beautiful. Bang, cross-sell. Or maybe you go, hey, so you're complaining about slow internet speeds. Do you know why? It's because taking a look at it, you're using too much internet on your home phone plan. It's getting slowed down. Maybe it's time to upsell you onto the higher bundle whilst you're here. Because you're complaining about slow internet. It's not our fault. Your kids are using too much internet. Have a shit one. It's not about us, it's about you. And that was more of a right size than an upsell, but you get the idea. Is that, again, just constantly problem solving across a broad array of issues all the time. And because you're dealing with the consumer market, you have to deal with a lot of dumb questions from customers that don't know how to use their phone properly. The amount of times that old ladies, and I mean it, older ladies, could be mums as well, would come in with their iPhone 4 or 5 or 6 back in the day, and they'd be like, all of my phone, I don't get any more phone calls. People tell me that the phone, they call me and they send me messages and then I see them, but they don't ring and I don't see the notifications, what's going on? And it's something as simple as turning off Do Not Disturb mode because they didn't understand that they've accidentally pressed it, and that's why they're not receiving phone calls and message notifications, right? So you're dealing with a lot of this stupidity and this dumbness sometimes is great conditioning to developing patience and tenacity when it comes to dealing with customers, particularly as you get more and more deeper into complex problems and troubleshooting. Because when it came to solving problems, we had to learn how to solve a lot of problems at once. And that's a lot for someone that is just, earning $25 an hour most of the time, just worrying about going to the week, getting shit-faced in the weekends and finger-banging people, right? So if you did like the tech, you had a lot of opportunity to learn how to solve tech problems from a broad array of capabilities. So that was my B2C career, business to consumer career. And then, I was like, hey, I'm absolutely dominating here. Maybe I should start selling business stuff now as well and sort of work my way up a little bit because I'm really nailing this game. I'll tell you a fun story before I talk about that though. So here, where is it? In 2014 was my most dominant year for sales and that part of the business, because I had won out of the 12 months top sales 7 times in the business. And I wasn't full-time, right? So I was selling the most in the business every month, and that was prorated compared to full-time salespeople that were there and who had been doing it for years, right? There were some people that had been there for like 7, 8 years that knew everything in it, all of the processes, all the whatnot, but I was still outperforming them consistently. So that was pretty cool to know. There was one month in particular. Let me try and find it. January, no, where is it? Here it is. So yes, so this February 2014, great year for me, or great month for me. And let me explain. So around this time, must have been, I think, December. Yeah, December 2013. I went to a mate's house, had a big night, couldn't be fucked going to work the next day. Chucked a sickie. Never chucked a sickie in my life, wasn't very good at it. Chucked a sickie and told the manager, yep, I'm sick, can't come in. And he's like, okay. He was a bit of a hard ass. He's like, okay, get me a doctor's certificate. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. And then every time I went in for the next 2 or 3 shifts, he's like, where's that doctor's certificate? And I was like, oh yeah, sorry, just keep forgetting it. It's coming, it's coming. I didn't go to the doctor's, I just chucked a sickie. So what I did was I found a doctor's certificate on the internet, shopped it and photoshopped it and then gave it to him. And yeah, he didn't believe that this was a doctor's certificate. He was a bit sus about it. So what this manager did, very wily dude, is he called the doctor's office and he goes, hey, did you issue a medical certificate to Jamil on this date? And they go, nope, no record of that. And he goes, interesting. And he calls me into his office and he sits me down and he goes, basically pretty straight up, he goes, so is this a real doctor's certificate? And I went, no. Straight up, I was just like, no, it's not a real one. And he goes, well, okay, so tell me why I shouldn't fire you right now for misconduct. And this is when lawyer mode just switched on for me, which I've always been told that I should be. And lawyer mode went, okay, here we go, here's the situation. There's 2 things at play here. First, let me preface this by going, at the same time that I chucked my sickie, there was another employee that I didn't realize this at the time, had realized was stealing from the shop. So what he was doing was processing refunds for little bits and pieces and putting the money from the till into his own pocket, or I think he would pocket devices. Either way, he was stealing from the business. And I go, okay, at this point in time, I'm selling quite consistently. I'm doing pretty well. I'm not completely smashing my sales number all the time, but I'm a consistent performer at this point and building, and he can sense that. So I go to him, okay, there's 2 things at play here. A, do you really want to be firing someone that is performing well, extremely well for your business and has not lost you any money in the process? I asked him, I went, I wagged the shift. It was a 5-hour shift. Did you replace my shift with anyone? And he goes, no, I didn't replace the shift. So I said, okay, so technically the business has not lost any money. If anything, you've saved money because you have saved money in wages from not covering my shift. And if I had stolen any amount of money from this business and I had a negative loss, fire me. Fire me straight away. And he goes, double click on that. Let's scratch that. So you're saying if I had lost any money as a result of your conduct, I should fire you. And I said, yep, absolutely. If I had lost you any money in this business from my action, fire me. But I didn't. And if anything, you have benefited financially as an organization from this. And again, if you fire me, is that really worth all the additional sales and capabilities that I've got because I chucked a sickie? Is that really worth it? And he sat back and he goes, let me talk to HR about this. And I had this very nervous way thinking I was going to get fired from Telstra at that time for stealing, or for wagging work. So he goes, a couple of days later, he goes, okay, you're not getting fired, but we're going to give you a final written warning for your conduct. And I went, fine, I'll take that. It's A-okay. The next week, we found out the other guy had got fired for theft. But the other thing he told me, he goes, you're going to have to sell to make up for this fact, right? You better be performing well and make sure that I don't regret this decision. And I go, yeah, of course. Nothing's going to change about the way I sell. I'm getting better every single month. Cut to a couple of weeks later, to February 2014. My manager, his name's Brendan, he runs a competition. I'm going to run this competition. He goes, I'm going to run this competition, a top sales one, right? We're going to blitz this month. I'm going to give $400 in gift card vouchers to anyone that can hit all 16 of their metrics and have an NPS score of above 50 for the month. So NPS is your customer satisfaction score. And I went, all right, let's fucking go. Let's give this a crack. Because at this point in time, I had a lot of confidence. I'd already won January's top sales. I knew I was a consistent performer. I was getting all the shifts that I wanted at that time because they knew that I could bring in money and that I had a good attitude. And $400 in gift cards back then, for me as a 22-year-old, was a lot of money on top of the wages because it's tax-free income. So I went, all right, challenge accepted. So throughout the month, I focused on selling and hitting every single one of my metrics and absolutely fucking nailed it, right? 16 metrics is a lot to hit. It's a wide array of products. Some products almost never fucking sell, and I was a specialist at selling things like Big Pond Security, which was this terrible antivirus program that was rebought and white labeled by Telstra at the time. I was selling numerous plans and bundles at the time. What I would do is, because we weren't remunerated based on, once I had hit my sales number, for example, if I had to sell 10 new mobile plans in 1 month, I've already hit my number. I don't really get any additional incentive. There's no direct commission structure at that time. So if other people were struggling with their number and I'd already, say, made 12 new sales for the month and my target was 10, I would just do the sale, process everything, but give it to somebody else that wasn't hitting their number to make the claim on the sale and get the freebie. Because I was just like, fucking, I don't care, here you go. But at this point, yeah, every shift I was trying to upsell, trying to make sure that I hit my number, trying to get customers and ask them about particular products at any point in time. And I think the next best person in that competition only hit like 10 or 11. So I had absolutely blitzed this sales competition by hitting all of these sales numbers, all these metrics. Again, just understanding what customers want. Nothing was done shoddily. Upselling customers to insurance because, you know, they're getting the shiny new iPhone and it's $1,500 and what happens if it breaks, get the phone insurance. You need a new landline? Sure, you're relocating your mum from her house to a nursing home. Let's set up a new landline for her so she knows how to be connected the way that she understands. Just all these little bits and bobs that I knew about how to solve problems for people in sales over and over again. And then, yeah, with my customer satisfaction score, because I'm just trying to help people and solve their problems, and I give them a nice little surprise and delight with the way that I can articulate why this technology is good for them, my NPS score was somewhere in the 70s to 80s. So very, very high at the time. So I remember early March that year, we have a team meeting and they go for the awards, and Brendan has to begrudgingly congratulate me on the sales efforts and give me the $400 worth of gift cards less than 2 months after I was on the verge of being fired for misconduct and, you know, chucking a sickie. And he didn't even like legitimately congratulate me. I remember it was sort of like I had shown him up because I was like, see, I can fucking sell and I will sell. So he gave me that the $400 gift card. I remember just reveling in it for a little bit and going, fuck, I have absolutely nailed this. And then for the next 3 to 4 months, March, April, May, missed out in June, I was top salesperson at that Telstra shop and kept killing it. Even more so, my brand in the region was expanding because I was very good at selling Foxtel. I was very good at selling into Big Pond Security. And I had a very high attach rate to the cross-sell and the upsell, which is what any sales organization wants when they talk about, just making the most out of a customer and getting that share of wallet. So, yeah, there's an old story from the crypt about my sales capabilities. In the B2B world, which is business to business, so selling to organizations, small business customers, all the way up to enterprises, which I've been doing for the last 5 to 6 years now, I have never missed a full year's sales quota in my career. So in 6 years of selling, I have never missed my annual target, including this year. And I will be honest, this is my first full sales year at Cisco, that's ending next month in July. In the first half, I just missed. I missed by like 3% because deals had slipped, and I hadn't really been focusing too much on actual sales in Cisco that much because I had the burnout, I had the injury. So I wasn't operating at full capacity, and I knew it. I knew I was being lazy. And that laziness showed up in my number, and it fucking kicked me in the guts. It really hurt me because at that point in time, that November, December mark, when I realized I wasn't going to make it, I was already thinking about rebuilding the sales course and getting it going. And one of my key, in my head, this little key qualifier is to go, I've never missed. I've never fucking missed a B2B sales number. I've absolutely dominated my B2C sales numbers my entire career. Like from that period of time, like from basically, let's just call it from January 2014 onwards, I had never missed even my minimum sales quota. Right? All my KPIs, always hit them, always smashed them. And again, 7 out of 12 months in 2014. 2015, I was again killing it, but I was less focused on getting top sales because I was at uni. I was just happy to get by and get paid, didn't make a difference. And then in my B2B career, again, my first year, so here's my sales numbers for the last 6 years in sales. So my first year as an account executive at Telstra, I finished on like 120 something percent. Second year, when I thought I was due for a promotion, I got to 182% in sales, right? That's a fucking heavy number. Third year, I was not technically in a sales role, but I was doing the majority of the selling because I kept my portfolio. Telstra was going through a restructure. I hit, I think, around the 150% mark as a team, as a partnership number in that sales pod. And then in my first year as a proper BDM inside Telstra, which was the year I got made redundant, I hit 130% to my sales number. And that was my first year, and that was the year I got made redundant. So even though I was absolutely killing it during the pandemic, they still got rid of me. But we'll talk about that another time. And then now, in my first full year at Cisco, I am I have hit my number for the year already, with about a month to go in the full year number. And then I am on track to make around 150% to my sales number. So a complete history of sales performance, sales overperformance there, right? A complete track record. There's a small chance, I think I talked about this last week, maybe the week before. There's a small chance I could make 200+% and really get some status inside Cisco where I could get Chairman's Club, which is the top 1% of sellers. I'm a pretty good chance to get Sales Champion, which is the top 10% of salespeople globally. I've already won the two most prestigious awards I can win inside my business unit twice, the Perfect 10 Award for top sales in my region for the quarter. Again, just consistent overachievement of my sales number, both in business and consumer. So if that doesn't tell you I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, it should by now, okay? And that's why I don't doubt myself when I know why I'm putting this out there, because all of my theories, all the way that I've applied myself has worked, and it's worked for me. And once you apply it to yourself, I know it'll work for you. So that is a big lump of my sales capabilities and background. Next, we will talk about mindset. I'm going to grab a drink of water. Mindset. What frame of mind do you need to be in when it comes to being really good at sales? I can only talk from my perspective, so I will. But what I've said before is that it's about problem solving. It's not about money grabbing. It's not about squeezing every cent out of the customer by pushing as many products as you can down their throat. It's about genuinely solving their problem, wanting them to feel good, feel better about where they're at, taking them a step forward in their journey, in their own evolutions, right? When it comes to the mindset you need to develop yourself, these are all skills, right? What we are teaching here, what the sales course is, what your life should be in general, is a constant pursuit, an infinite game of skill and personal development. Okay. One of the good things that I took away from that hard-ass manager back in 2014 was he said something that resonated a lot with me. And he goes, will versus skill, right? If you've got the will, I can teach you skill, right? But if you don't have the will, I can't teach you anything, right? Now, I sort of expanded on that to go, the hunt and the cunt, right? Have you got the hunt? Have you got the desire to get out there, face rejection, and push through? And have you got the doggedness, the cuntiness inside you to be persistent, to be resilient, to be consistent with your actions, with your approach to sales and speaking to customers? And I said that about someone who became one of my mentees later on. She came into the business. I wasn't sure if she was fit for the role, but she very happily, and I'm very proud to say that she proved me wrong, and it's fantastic. But to go back to will versus skill, you need to want to do this. You need to want to get better at it. Just like anything in life, if you don't have the intent or the motivation, the desire to do it, you're going to drag yourself through it needlessly, pointlessly. It's going to hurt for no good reason. You have to have an internal locus, an internal kernel of something inside you that wants to get better at this. If you don't, and that doesn't come intrinsically, it doesn't come from this desire to get better, not to chase something for the sake of money, then you are not going to really ingrain this. And if you've got that will, then I can teach you the skills. I can teach you exactly how these systems work, how the game works, because you're gonna get it wrong and fuck up, and that's okay, because that's feedback, and that's how you learn, and that's how you progress. Or what's important is that burning motivation to get it done. And if you've got the will, I can teach you anything. You can learn anything. I've had the will to learn a lot of things over the last couple of years, from diet to mental health to meditation to, create the creator economy, learning how to edit things, learning how to run a business. All of the things that I've done over the last few years has all just been from this intense will and this acquisition of skill. And why I'm building this course is because I had the desire to build a course, but I did not know how to, so I acquired somebody else's skill and again, applied that to myself. I had the will, I don't have the skill, let me find someone who has the skill, pay them to give me that skill. That's why I'm building this course now, because I didn't realize, I knew that I didn't have that in me, but I knew I wanted to do it, okay? So it's all about that attitude. That's the number one perspective that you need the desire, the want to get better at this, the will to do it. Now, the other concept that I love, which is it's a relatively new concept to me, maybe the last couple of years, and it's by a fantastic author called Simon Sinek. So Sinek. And who Simon is, he calls himself an eternal optimist or something like that. But basically he's a mindset and leadership coach. He's written a couple of great books such as Leaders Eat Last, and The Infinite Game is another of his concepts. I think actually but extrapolated by somebody else. And the idea behind that is that we play finite games and infinite games. And the finite game is where there's it's like a sport, right? You've got a time limit, you've got ways to score, you've got ways to win, you've got ways to lose. And at the end, there's a winner and a loser, right? We play finite games in sport all the time, and we play finite games in business all the time, where it's about beating the competitor and we win. But really, with business, unless a business dissipates and completely dies off the arse, which is impossible, not impossible, but highly improbable, particularly in the sales game and the tech game, because you're not usually selling, unless you're in the startup game and those startups fall over, you're generally dealing with big tech organizations, titans of industry that are going to be around for a long time. We get fooled by our leaders, by capitalism, by society, that business is a finite game. But it's not, because if you are wholly and solely focused on your customers and not the competition, then you go into this infinite game of perpetual improvement, of evolution. And that perpetual evolution is really driven by your desire to improve incrementally on what you put out to your customers so they buy your product. And really, that infinite game also applies to how we get better internally in our own minds, right? We get fooled by managers and business leaders that we are playing a finite game of sales because at the end of June 30 or the end of financial year, that's that year done, you're back to zero again and we start this whole rigmarole again. And that's true to a degree, but realistically, when you are in this developmental game of life, and particularly when you are early in career, you're really focused on the infinite game of skill improvement, improving your communication skills, improving your business acumen skills, improving your prospecting and your forecasting skills, and all these little bits and bobs, all these little elements that improve your holistic experience as a salesperson, as an account manager, whatever it is. And because you take that experience from dealing with lots of customers, the feedback, what went right, what went wrong, and that builds your experience pool up. And you should be building upon that every year, right? Every new customer, every new portfolio, you're drawing from previous experience. That's why, experience counts in many games, right? Veterans understand, they get that different sense of the game that's being played here. And that's why they're relied upon as leaders, because they've been through that experience. And just like mentors, they can shape new recruits, new people to be efficient at this process and quicken their capability, their effectiveness in market, right? Or in the game itself. So, like we talked about last week, soft skills and people skills compound in time. We should be focusing on skills that compound in time and service eternally in these infinite games. So your soft skills, communication skills, emotional intelligence, social psychology, business acumen, these are all eternal skills because the business world is based on human psychology. People are the constant in our existence, in our world, and we need to understand how people think to make sense of what they do and why they do it. And then, likewise, this is an infinite game until you choose to quit it at getting better at people, getting better at sales, getting better at technology, learning new technology, etc. And leadership, which is what Simon talks about, is again, the function of leadership is not to lead as a title of, it's not, leaders, there's a hierarchy to leadership, yes, but the sole purpose of a leader in an organization is to enable their team members, their subordinates, the people under their care, their best work and effort towards the shared outcome they have as that unit, right? Leadership is a service that you provide to other people. And you can, just like we can always slowly and a little bit get better at our craft or whatever, leadership as a skill is also an infinite game, because you can get better at being a better leader and getting the most out of your team and out of your unit every single day. Because again, it is a skill. Just leadership is a skill. It's a trait, but it can be taught like a skill, right? So this idea that don't focus on the outcome, focus on the improvement of the process. Play the infinite game of improvement. Don't get necessarily sucked into the finite game of, oh shit, if I only make 95% of my number this year, then something's gonna happen. No, it's not. That's the benchmark to improve on for next year, particularly if you're early in the game, right? If you get your number in the first 2 years of your sales game, good. But if you don't, but you've improved incrementally over those period of time, then that's what's more important, right? When I tell people their first year in sales, don't worry about the number. Worry about how you build your systems and your processes and how you deal with customers and get used to the fucking mess that usually occurs inside a technology ecosystem, because it's complex. It's a very complex beast. Not just of the external environment, dealing with the customers and their priorities and business and all the solutions that are out there, but there's an absolute litany and a fucking mess of systems and processes inside a tech organization as well that they didn't have any clue what to understand about. And a lot of those systems and processes are clunky, and they're on programs that are probably older than them, right? Part of the reason why Telstra was, it was a powerhouse, and it could have been an even bigger powerhouse if they got their shit together as far as operationally and managing customers more effectively, but they couldn't because their processes and their systems were so old and so poorly documented that nobody knew how to do shit, and they were highly inefficient. Telstra's core billing system, which still exists to this day, right, runs on COBOL, it runs on a mainframe infrastructure and an application that is older than me. It's probably 35 to 40 years old. And in technology terms, that is an absolute fucking fossil. And that's the thing, is that there is so much legacy and tech debt in these bigger organizations that's what makes them big and slow and not as effective in market, is because they can't be as agile with their tool sets and their internal capabilities to serve their customers effectively. So a key part of actually getting better at being in a new organization or being in a company is not necessarily not just the external understanding of customers and the economy and the business and what their needs are. A lot can be done inside a business, understanding the systems and processes and being able to leverage them. I was going to say manipulate or exploit, which I've done, to your benefit and to get real shit done in a business. Internal mastery of tools is one of the secret sources to being a fantastic account manager and keeping your fucking nose clean for a customer. And we'll explain that in a different ep. All right, so we're talking about mindset, done that. Tech sales ecosystem, sure. So, we talk about systematic thinking a lot on this podcast. I'll be teaching systematic thinking inside the sales course as well. And why is that? Because everything exists in an ecosystem. Everything exists in an ecosystem. Your body is a complex array of systems that are compounded into each other. Your body is an ecosystem. We live on the planet, which is a very complex ecosystem. And the more you understand about the system itself, about all the moving parts and all the bits and the bobs and all the things you can leverage and twist and turn, the more effective that you can be to leverage gaps, faults, capabilities, potentials, seeing things that other people don't see in an ecosystem because they're too focused on one part. They can't see the forest from the trees. That's what can make you really effective as a salesperson or anyone in any industry when you understand how it all works, not just your little piece of thing, not just your bit, your little bit of tech or your little product that you're trying to flog every single day. So in the course, I'm going to do a full ecosystem map, which sounds less complex than it does. But really, what are the key players inside tech sales? It's actually fairly simple, but the interconnections can be a little bit complex, right? So number one is your customer. That is the number one thing. That's the most important part, because without customers having needs and wants and wanting to exchange their money for values and value for services and products, we wouldn't exist in this game. There's the customers. Then there is the tech vendors. There's your Cisco's, your Microsofts, your Apples, right? The guys that make the tech and sell it to you. Then we also have the partner ecosystem. And what these people are, they're the service integrators. So they're the organizations that resell the tech and implement it for organizations, right? So, they install it. And you don't really hear much of that in the B2C world. Maybe you've heard of things like Geeks to You and things like that, where nerds will come to your house and, fix your connections up and wire your internet, whatever it is. But the service integrator partner and the partner ecosystem, technology partner ecosystem, is quite immense as well, because vendors cannot service all their customers at once. So what they do is distributors and these service integrators will resell the products and then as a layer of additional service, install it, consult on what technology is best for the customer, that blah, blah, blah. Then we have regulations and government bodies, right? This is, in Australia, that could be the ACCC, compliance and government regulations. So even like regulatory bodies, things like the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection something for Europe. That's a regulation about how your data is managed. Laws, and I'm going to expand this later on, but yeah, laws and regulations that sort of set the rules of how we engage inside the industry. And then there is communities of interest, and that is peak bodies for various associations inside the tech industry. The internet is a community of interest. It's anywhere where you can source information about the products you're trying to source or the solutions you're trying to source. All right? This is where you can get insights, capabilities from other organizations that are also selling tech. I'll give you an example for a peak body. I deal with a lot of local government customers here in Australia. So, your councils. So for me, I live in the Maribyrnong Council area. I used to work in the Knox City Council, live in the Knox City Council area, local government, right? Now, the good thing about local government is they have a lot of needs for technology because they serve a very diverse range of community projects and services, but they also do not really compete. All they need to do is manage their territory, their council area, and the bounds within it, and do that as effectively as possible. So what does that mean? These councils do not compete with each other, right? All they're doing is focus on service delivery to their constituents. So what they do is they collaborate. All these councils, each council has an IT department, has a regulatory committee, etc. They have this organization which is called, there's a local government association. There's also the Municipal Association of Victoria. These are peak bodies that provide industry-wide insights about what's happening, current trends, trying to help enable these local government constituents and these operators, so the councils and whatnot. And so what these peak bodies have is a lot of influence. Because there's no competition inside the councils, a lot of IT teams will go to neighbouring councils or friends they've got in the industry and go, hey, what are you doing about this product? Or what are you doing about your networking? What are you doing about your cloud? So a lot of that information, which is very important because it's a trusted network of information, which we'll talk about in a later episode, it's very important to understand what that exchange of information is, right? Because if you can influence that, then you have a lot of leverage to not influence a small body of people that can provide better mind share across an entire industry, right? So for example, in South Australia, Cisco doesn't have a very large presence in data center because we have no on-the-ground presence. We don't have dedicated salespeople in South Australia. Our competitors do, and because they have that local connection, they dominate the council space there because they go, oh yeah, I know so-and-so from my competition, from Dell, for example. So Dell's doing well in this council, and they've got mates in the other council, and they'll go, oh yeah, that's working for him, I'll do the same thing, right? There's a lot of memetics involved, a lot of monkey see, monkey do that exists in most industries. And understanding that is also crucial to create additional leverage about how you scale mind share in your products and your solutions to the market. Again, we'll talk about that in a later ep. But why that peak body is useful to understand is because they have a significant amount of information leverage inside the ecosystem. So once you identify your key players inside an ecosystem, the key components, right? These are the nodes of information, resources exchange. What you then do is understand what's being exchanged between these bodies, right? So between partners and vendors, it's money and solutions, right? What's being exchanged between customers and peak bodies, it's usually resources, it's information, sometimes it can be a bit of funding as well. So what you do is you link up, sort of like, when you watch like a murder mystery, and they've got all these photos up on the walls, and they've got all the strings that are linking people from this to that. You need to do that with your ecosystem, and we'll do that in the course as well, you need to understand the flow of resources, you need to understand the flow of money, of information, those three key areas, and maybe a little bit more. But if you understand where those things are flowing, then you can understand where the key leverage points are. And if you influence those, you can be extremely effective in scaling out your impact for your sales activity to a large amount of customers at once. And I'll give you the example that I was given to explain this to me when I learned about ecosystems. So in the medical industry, big pharma, corrupt. We understand that, right? So what pharmaceutical industry realized, big pharma realized, is that it's not really effective to market products and medicines to the end user, to the public, because they're not going to know what to do with that information, and they're not going to understand what to do with that, and they don't know if it's right for them. Because what do? They go to doctors. So the doctor is the linchpin inside the ecosystem for big pharmaceuticals, because that is where the exchange of money information is for them, right? That's their front line. Customers very rarely go, can I get Viagra or something like that? They have to get a script. So understanding that doctors are the gatekeepers in their ecosystem, pharmaceutical companies in the 90s and 2000s, and probably still occurs today, would heavily incentivize doctors with kickbacks, with rebates, with trips overseas, in exchange for preferential treatment of their drugs. So they would get, a kickback, so they get a little bit more in their pocket for selling X amount of Viagra or Vicodin or whatever it is, because they knew that that's where they would make the most money from. That's where the most value is exchanged. And that worked for quite a long time. There were doctors that made millions and millions of dollars over time and clinics that made millions of dollars from the rebates from the pharmaceutical companies, right? Because they understand where the distribution points are and leverage those to make more money. Eventually that was exposed, and that was a breach of Hippocratic Oath, and it was a big hoodoo, and was the beginning of the breakdown of the belief and the shattering of the perception of the pharmaceutical industry. And here we are today. Nobody believes them. They're a big shill. I'll probably get taken down on YouTube for that comment, but fuck it. So understanding your ecosystems, the players, the exchanges of flow of resources, money, knowledge, very important. In the course, I will break that down and explain that in more detail, because this is a rough draft. All right, look, that's bang on the hour pretty much. So I'm going to leave it there for this week. I know we were supposed to cover off B2B versus B2C sales. That is a big chunky module on its own. So we will do all of that next week. That'll be a pretty neat and tidy, so neat, pretty weird, neat and tidy, module on that. Understanding what B2C sales is versus B2B, what the differences are, all that good stuff. It's really crazy to me, sort of reflecting on that top student for sales prize, is that they don't have sales courses anymore. They really need to teach the art of sales inside universities again. I actually spoke to one of my mentors who was a lecturer at the uni that taught me. Shout out to him, Joel Hare. He taught me about ecosystems and systemic thinking, and yeah, paradigm shift in my belief system and the way I thought about things. Still catch up with him regularly. Great dude. But important stuff. I'm running out of brain already. Next week, B2C, B2B sales. Hope you're enjoying this. Guys, if you've got any feedback, please respond to the comments, DM me at Jamil J. Raymond, email me, j@jamilraymond.com. I'd love to hear your feedback on what's happening, what you'd love to hear more of in the course if you're listening intently. I need feedback so I know what to improve. I can tell you that the story around a lot of that sales background stuff won't be in the course. I just thought it'd be cool to talk about my history and the why. Again, you need to understand why people's whys are, so you understand what their motivation is to look after you and what's in it for them versus what's in it for you. Anyhow, next week, sales course keeps going. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you very much for your time and attention, binges. Mwah. And I'll see you next week. Ciao for now.